Welcome to the gathering at the Cosmic Fire 2024 Summit, a celebration of the source of our awakening. Whether you were nurtured by earth-based wisdom your entire life, you were blessed to meet a teacher along your path, or you are listening here today on the threshold of something new, each one of us has been gifted an opportunity to awaken more deeply in every moment and to be of sacred service. Together, we are embarking on an amazing adventure around the cosmic fire. Honored shamanic earth-based healers, teachers, and wisdom keepers from around the globe will share their stories of awakening, each offering beauty and illuminating wisdom and medicine ways that may be our most valuable natural resource. This gathering is brought to you by Shaman's Directory, an online global platform dedicated to bringing shamanic earth-based services to the world's doorstep. At Shaman's Directory, we are committed to honoring the Earth's living lineages, the medicine people and communities who invite our human family to heal and to awaken to a better, more kind, more sustainable way forward. I am Mayumi Beckers, one of your hosts at the Cosmic Fire, and I'm really delighted to have Christina Allen here. Welcome, Christina. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayumi. It's my honor to be here.
Wonderful. So before we begin, for those of you who don't know Christina and her work, I'm going to take a little moment to share a bit more about her. Christina Allen is a modern day medicine woman, spiritual teacher, and writer. She was initiated into the healing arts through her own childhood trauma. People who know her now refer her to as Pathfinder, as she takes what she knows from her own suffering and from all of her training and knowledge, and she blazes into new territories, finding new paths toward healing. Her foundation is built on a strong set of critical thinking and research skills that she honed from studying physics and neuroscience. But her magic comes from decades of being immersed in the Andean healing arts. It is this alchemy of a solid, no nonsense scientific approach, blended with the beauty, grace, and elegance of how she holds the pure energetic, that makes her unique to work and study with. This blend of Asian wisdom, scientific grounding, and personal experience is at the heart of everything Christina shares in her trainings and writings as well. Whether you're in a training or on her table, she's here to help you look unflinchingly into yourself, to help you unravel your dysfunction, and then remember your grace. The topic for our conversation is Every Initiation is a Death and Rebirth. Again, welcome, Christina. What an amazing topic. And
Yeah,
thank
thank you, Mayumi. It's just a little light topic. But I was thinking about that when I was asked to give a topic, and I thought, these initiations in life change us, and they change us from who we were before we got the initiation into who we are becoming. They open doors, and there's this threshold that we cross. And we have lots of different kinds of initiations. Some come through our personal life, some come through our training, some come through graduations from programs. But every single one of them is a doorway where we leave something behind and we open ourselves up to something new.
Yes, I think it's a great, great topic. And to dive into this more deeply and also from your experience, I would love to hear more from you about your path. And when did you first know that you had these healing gifts, and where do you think that these healing gifts came from? So your journey around that, if you could share something for us.
Yeah, when did I first know I had healing gifts is sort of a complex question, because I think I knew early on, but I doubted it, and it wasn't part of my culture, and it wasn't part of my family structure, and so it became a make-believe kind of thing. I don't think that I had any kind of validation for anything like that. To start, I would say where it all started for me was with an early childhood trauma. And it was a trauma that was relatively dramatic and traumatic in the sense that I was a 4-year-old child left in the care of my grandparents. And my grandmother got angry with something that I said, and she hit me, and she broke my collarbone. And no one else knew because it was just the two of us in the kitchen. And she hit me with a spoon, and she scooted me into my bedroom and made me, like bad girl, go to bed without dinner kind of thing. But I had a broken collarbone, and I was left in that room alone all night long. And it wasn't until the next morning that it was addressed. And then I was told I did it to myself, that I fell out of bed and broke my collarbone. And so there is, I think, this alchemy that happened for me in that time of being in excruciating pain and having no safe place to go. Like if I left my bedroom, I had to go to her, right? And she was not safe at this point. My parents were gone. So I think there was something that happened in that room, being alone and in pain for a whole night. And it was an initiation. It was where I changed from being an innocent child to one being, wrapping myself around pain. Like if you can imagine you have to endure something painful, you wrap yourself around that pain and you move through it. But I think it also got integrated into my personality because you're still developing yourself. So there's this whole kind of initiation into sourcing from pain and understanding pain. But the secondary thing is it's the shaman's cave, right? I'm in this room for 12 hours sourcing for whatever I can find to heal, to make it through it, to be able to come out the next day as a human being. And so I think there was some kind of also magical thing that happened to me in that sense of I opened up to a bigger realm because the parental realm was not going to serve me at this point. I couldn't cry to my mommy and daddy. The other thing that I think is interesting about these things is when we have pain, when we have a trauma when we're a child, we run to our parents, and our parents hold us and they reset our nervous system. They bring us back into alignment with their normal nervous system. But that didn't happen on my watch. I was not going to my grandmother to be held. Thank you very much. My parents were out of town. They were out of the country even. So it was several days before my mom got back. And I think that also sort of dysregulated me in a way that became part of where I got my gifts, because I started to have hypervigilance, to be very aware, to be, scrutinizing all kinds of things that you don't necessarily even think about until you look back on it and go, where did all this come from? So I would say that would have been my first initiation into the shamanic realm, in a sense, which has this place of being between the worlds, being between, life and death, dark and light. And that was very much, I think, my initiation into that. But there was a secondary initiation into it when I was in high school, which was sort of coming out of that room in a way. I was like 15 or 16. I went to a Grateful Dead concert and took psychedelics and had this sort of religious, if you will, spiritual awakening of belonging to everything. So it was sort of like the light side of the dark side of where I had been. I saw that, all of creation was, this inclusive thing that I was part of. So instead of being in my dark room anymore, I was now part of the fabric of creation. And so I think those two things are both informed me and both changed me and both woke me up to my gifts. I don't think I really put them to use, my healing gifts, other than saving little birds for my cat and things like that, until I was well into being an adult. At the time when I was a high school student, I awoken to the idea that I would like to be a shaman. I was reading Carlos Castaneda books back in the time, and I thought, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. But I had no at that. This was in the 1970s. There was no place to study at that time. I was a female. That was just, from the white kid from the suburbs kind of thing. I was clearly going off to college, and there's nothing in college that prepares you for that. So that I would say would be, sort of how I awoke into my gifts. Eventually, when I was in my 40s, I finally started studying with a shamanic based teacher. So it took a long time before I got there, but in the interim, I had to do a lot of healing work, which I think was part of my journey. And I studied physics because I didn't have a shamanic path. I was like, well, this seems like the most shamanic path in the Western tradition is what is matter? How does it work? How is it created? There's this little equation that says energy is matter and matter is energy. Like, how does that happen? And I've watched that happen on psychedelics. I've watched things dissolve and come into form. And what is that? So that was my best approach, and then neuroscience was all about consciousness, all about shifting consciousness, thinking reality is one thing and then finding it's another, or, letting go of realities. So I think I was doing it the best I could in the Western way until I was finally able to get a teacher that started me into the traditions. And that's what introduced me into the Andean practices.
Right, beautiful. And yeah, I know that you have been trained in these Andean practices and also blending your gifts also with the physics and the neuroscience areas. So as you've done both sides basically, like, and also from your experience, I wonder if you could say something about what do you think are the dangers are for people who are coming into the gifts without a training?
That's a great question. Yeah, what's interesting to me is I came from a solid science background into the spiritual arts, instead of the other way around. Most people seem to, just find their gifts and start using them. But in the scientific training, you are really rigorously trained to critically think. And you are trained to do research, so you have to test things, you have to see if they're true, there's peer review if you're really into the publishing scientific data, that kind of thing. So there's this sense of a rigor and a questioning and a relentlessness, but also, like, you can't just make something up. You can't just go, yeah, well, the brain does this. But what I found when I got out of the hard sciences and into the spiritual realm, if you weren't in a tradition, you could say anything you wanted to. People would say anything they wanted to. People would say, well, spirit told me this, and well, spirit told me that. And they would tell you about you because spirit told them this about you, and you had this, and there's, these are your energetic problems. And it's dangerous because without critical thinking, without looking at ourselves, without having some kind of training and some kind of way of referencing, which I also learned in the Andean tradition. So what I'm saying is two things. One, each structure, each training that you get teaches you a form that allows you to come back and ground the insights that you get into reality, and makes you check these things. But if you don't, you can end up, doing some damage. You can end up projecting your own darkness on somebody else and saying some horrible things. If you don't do your inner work, if you don't, lean into why am I saying this, and where is this coming from you? If you haven't really explored your own stuff, and you don't adhere to some certain rules that have been established through lines of tradition, you can go four-wheeling, and I'm a four-wheeler, don't get me wrong, but I think you have to do it with discernment. You have to do it with some level of credibility, because because here it comes down to superstition. Superstition is why we went into science. It's why we started negating spiritual and religious belief systems as truth. And we started to go, well, that's just spiritual, because it wasn't necessarily something you can prove and necessarily something you could say was accurate and true. It was something that was believed, and somebody else could believe something different. And people could have these spiritual experiences, and that was supposed to be the truth for everybody. Or things were written in a document, and and people were interpreting it, and through different languages, and saying this is what the truth is. When you come back to science, science's MO is, you can say whatever you want to, but we're going to shoot it down. If it survives the firing squad, then we'll say it's a truth. So it's really rigorous. And what I like about a tradition is it's been around for a very long time. And a tradition will weed out the things that don't work. It'll weed out the places that they know are the potential places for humans to get squishy, for humans to involve their own projections and their own wounding and their own whatever onto people. So the tradition has been in place for a long time. So in a sense, it's like peer review. It's like whatever doesn't work in the tradition gets thrown out. We don't know, we don't go there. We have a thing to address that, settle in and, do the works, consider the structure. So I say that when people have not done the training and they're just willy-nilly, reading you psychically and telling you have this wrong and that wrong, it can be kind of unnerving, and it's dangerous for the person on the receiving end, especially if that's not at all what's going on with them. Telling somebody that the reason they're doing something is because they have this big demon that's running their system, when in fact they've got some deep pain piece that they have to get into and witness and unravel and face and own as something that they put in place. There's a completely different outcome from those two different trajectories. Just calling in a demon and extracting it doesn't make the person do the work of, oh, why have I got this part of myself that is so hateful and so mean and so angry and separates myself from everybody else? And how has that served me? And taking ownership of that takes us on a different trajectory. So that's what I mean by trainings, that trainings anchor you into, if you really follow them, into deeper truths and into deeper, integrity with yourself and with the traditions that you teach from or work from.
This is great. Very valuable to really understand about all of these teachings, to really integrate them and really, internalize them as well. And as these traditions have survived for so long, like they probably have internalized many different things. And as you said, they weed things out that didn't work. I think it's really beautiful, and how you also express this traditional thinking as well as with the scientific thinking as well. I think it's really well explained. And as you were talking about all of these trainings, I'm also curious if you can say something about your training and how you have been trained throughout, your shamanic practice, and as you've become a teacher and healing yourself right now.
Yes, I can. I would say my first training was my own personal trauma. Because it was so confusing. It was so confusing to not know what my truth was. I didn't wake up to the fact that my grandmother hit me until I was in my 40s. I believed that I had done it to myself. And so what happens, because she gaslit me and lied to my parents, there was always this kind of nebulous relationship with other people's narratives. Like, maybe it's true. Maybe what they're saying about me is true. Maybe what, and people say what they say based on their own needs and their own perceptive lenses. And so I would feel like I would get kind of, flowed into everybody else's narratives. And most people's narratives are self-serving. So I would end up on this low end of the totem pole every time I would collude with somebody's false narrative. And so I would say that was my first training, was, like how to surf that and how to find my own personal truth in that and learn how not to get caught in that. I would say then my scientific training was really important for, teaching me how to think, teaching me how to critically think, and teaching me how to do research, to really get in there and, evaluate variables, to troubleshoot, all that kind of stuff. That was really an important aspect. And then of course the wisdom that comes from knowing, all about physics, and the wisdom that comes from knowing all about neuroscience. And I laugh when I say that because we don't know all about either of those. We just know the tip of the iceberg about any of that. But having some basics on either of those gave me structures that I can apply to reality. And what I'd say about my scientific training is what it taught me, especially physics. Physics was the first place that I studied. I got my undergrad in physics. I remember realizing, like, what we're doing here is we are applying models to reality. We're applying scientific models to reality. We don't know what reality is, but if we can fit it into this model, then we can make a prediction about what the outcome would be. So an example of that would be if we can take a molecule, which is two different atoms that are engaged with each other, and put it in the mathematical construct of a spring connecting two masses, then maybe we can make some predictions about how this thing will wobble in space. But we don't know what the molecule really is. We're using this mathematical model of a spring and masses to talk about the atoms and their connections. So what I saw in science is, this is what we do. We apply models to reality, and then we test our models to see if they're true. And this is, I really like that because I think what people can do is they can think the models are truth, right? And they can get really caught in, no, God's name is yada yada, and this is a true thing, and the brain is that, and the brain is that, and we're always in this dynamic flux of discovery and refinement. And so my training in science in that sense was about science, but it was also about how to think and how to realize that we're using constructs. So by the time I got to my training in shamanic studies, my first teacher was Alberto Vialdo, and he was teaching about the Andean tradition, but he blended it with a lot of other shamanic traditions. So at the time, I wasn't clear that that's what we were getting. So there was this sense of, okay, here's another construct to put over reality. And it's a construct to put over the reality that I was having to deal with in the psychiatric domain, because I had mood disorders, right? And I had to be on antidepressants and these kinds of things to deal with the dysregulation of my system. And when I started going into the shamanic realm, I'm like, oh, well, this is a different construct. This is a different way of overlaying on reality. And so then you start to realize, as someone who wants to tinker, as someone who wants to, go, well, how are things put together? What is this thing? You start to be able to take away the constructs, but use the constructs to get to truths, but also not hold on to them as if they are truth. So you get to make new truths. You get to go, I see where it takes me this far, but it doesn't take me where I need to go, in the long run. But it took me further than that one did. So I'm going to go with this one for a while. I went with the Alberto version for quite a while, and then I took Joan Percy Wilcox's online class, And she introduced me to her teachers, Juan and Yvonne Nunes del Prado. And they're teaching the more traditional Andean approach. And so it's a new construct. Really, it really is a different construct than the one that Alberto was doing. Alberto was bringing more of the shamanic realm. He was really coming from that place of how can I make the Andean stuff shamanic, whereas the true Andean stuff, as as Juan and Yvonne are teaching it, and Joan and me now, is not so shamanic in that sense. It's very much sort of like an applied physics, which I find fascinating. It's not so much about being in a trance, or and it's not about fearing spirits and protections and these kinds of things. It's about the world is energetic, and you can shift the energetic nature of things, and that's a whole higher level than that being in the jungle and fighting with that that hidden things in the behind the vines. It's true Andean in the sense that the Andes are the top of the mountain. There's nothing up there. There's not a lot except sky and rocks and glaciers and shrubs, llamas. So there's not this scary aspect of something's hiding in the leaves and hiding in the jungle. And what it makes you do is it's another level of accountability for the fear that we find that's hiding in the jungle of some of the shamanic traditions. And I'm not saying that stuff isn't true. I'm saying it's a different construct. And whatever construct that we embody is the construct that we perceive. And so coming into the Andean teachings as Juan and Yvonne and Joan are teaching it, takes you into this higher level of consciousness, this higher level, this construct that allows you to have personal power in a way that's not fear-based. It's not I have personal power and I'm going to I'm going to be the jaguar and fight the spirits that are coming at me. I'm going to dissolve whatever is a problem and restructure it. Like, that's power. That's personal power. And so I feel like that's where I am with my training at this point, and it totally dovetails with my physics background, because in physics we're talking about energy. We're talking about where where mass dissolves into energy and energy coalesces into mass. So there's a sense of having my worlds come back together again in overlapping kind of ways. All my trainings lead to the same place. I'm happy that I have research skills, so I can go into the nitty gritty and feel comfortable asking questions and seeing if I can't get my own answers, because every construct is sort of limited by the person that teaches it on some level. So you have to still lean into it and extrapolate from the construct of the trainings.
Right, right. It also sounds like your personal experiences really helped a lot to embody all of the teachings and to make sense of all of the trainings that you received, and from this embodiment, like to come to also your own sort of personal power in some way and what's working for you. And I know that this power is quite, central in these Indian healing arts and in these traditions. And can you say something a little bit more about what it means to you to have this personal power?
Sure. It's interesting that you talk about embodiment, because one of the trainings that I forgot to mention was I studied as a yogi or yogini for many, many years, and had my own school. And that, like you said, that's what brought me in my body after being dissociated for so long. So the trauma put me into the dissociation, and I started graduate school and studying yoga at the same time. So it was not until I was in my 30s that I started to get into my body. And in my body, I started to realize that there is a power that comes through experience, a wisdom that comes through experience. So that being said, the shamanic traditions are experiential. They're very much about learning through your experience. And personal power is being able to be in yourself and hold your own. In the Andean tradition, there's this beautiful construct called the Canchis Patanyan that Juan brought through, Juan Nunes del Prado, that where he parallels the Andean tradition of increasing our personal power, which I'll come back to in a second, with the evolution of human consciousness spiritually. And he notices that they have the same patterning and trajectory, and he says this is a parallel path. This is the same path. In the Andean tradition, what we're doing is we're clearing ourselves energetically so that we become more congruent with ourselves and more congruent with the energy of creation. As we become more congruent with the energy of creation, we can use it more effectively. We have more reach, more power. We call it karpai. And so it takes a lot of refinement of your personal capacities to be able to hold that energy of creation and do things with it and have effect. And that's your karpai. And what Juan parallels it with is this idea that the development of our personal consciousness, which is our awareness of self, our awareness of reality, as that shifts and as that grows and as it expands, we are able to hold bigger truths about ourselves, truths about the world. We are able to be more and more inclusive, more and more powerful about how we use the energy of creation again. And there are steps to take to increase your personal awareness. There are steps to take in the Andean tradition to clear that gunk from your popo, we would say, from your energy field, from your psyche. It's the same thing. We're clearing this stuff from our psyche so that we can be in congruence with the energy of creation. Personal power is being able to hold yourself as you engage that energy and make things with it, do things with it, shape things with it. And so there's a lot of personal work that has to be done on all levels, energetically and psychologically, to be able to be solid in any kind of emotional or energetic environment. And this is the important thing. There is a level of consciousness where things are adversarial, but there's also a level of consciousness where everything is made out of the same material. Everything is from the same place. Everything is a reflection of the same mind, and you can be adversarial with it or you can be part of it, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I think it's also great that you're mentioning these karpais and initiations and to sort of, develop yourself further. And I also love your topic about every initiation is a death and rebirth. So can you perhaps speak a little bit more about this as well?
Yeah. So if we come back to that idea that every initiation is a death and a rebirth, the Kanchis Patanyan is 7 steps of personal development. And most of our culture is at the 3rd level. The 3rd level of personal development on the Kanchis Patanyan is, how far is your reach, as a Paco. A Paco is a shaman in the Andean tradition, for lack of a better, it's a priest, it's a healer, it's a shaman. There's lots of other words that we use because Paco isn't one of our words. But the idea is that at the 3rd level, we tend to be in a place of, I think it's driven by scarcity and greed. I think we're culturally in this place of trying to hoard resources, trying to, come into our own tribes, being afraid of other tribes, which is a level of personal development. It's a level of personal development. The positive side is there's a sense of self. There's a sense of autonomy. There's a sense of, I can do this. I can take care of myself. I've looked at my shadows. I've looked at my darkness, but it's a level that is also filled with strife, because it's very tribal, it's very dualistic, it's it's gender, look at all the different little wars we have going on right now, gender wars, political wars, um, just ideological wars, lots and lots of little things, maybe big things, but that's that's the structure of the third level. And what needs to die at the third level is this me and mine at the expense of you and yours. And that comes from opening up your heart, opening up your compassion, addressing your fear of scarcity, addressing your issues of loss, of not having enough. And so there's a death of an old way that opens the door to a new way. And this is one of the initiations I think our whole culture is in right now, is whatever that old way is. And it's interesting because we're saying, like, I want to go back to the 50s and 60s. It was safe then, everything was all defined then. We knew exactly how to act, who to be, we knew what our gender roles were, we knew all the things. And now we don't know whose gender is what gender. We don't know. There's no moral structure. There's no, it's all chaos. Anybody can do anything. Anyone can sleep with anybody. Anyone can marry anybody. There's this sense of, we've lost our rudder. And so there's fear about that. But there's another place on the other side of letting go of all that structure of the third level and saying, okay, let's recreate structure in a new way. So again, where I'm going with this is there's a death. This old thing that we're looking at is dying. You can see it's kicking and screaming, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on right now as we enter into this election era, as we enter into this big time of shift and change, and something is dying. And we're even watching it, literally, parts of it are literally dying. People are getting, assassination attempts are happening. People are dying from diseases, all these kinds of things are happening. So that's how I would say it relates to our culture. We are going through an initiation right now. And karpai, the word karpai has a few different interpretations. It is an initiation, but it's also the measure of your power. So it's interesting that we say a karpai is an initiation, because what we do is we go from a level of karpai, of personal power that we had, and then we get the karpai initiation, and it opens us up to having a bigger reach, more karpai, more personal energy. And that's what we're looking at, but it's scaring people. Each one of us goes through these different initiations in our own life too. We go through these places where, we're a kid and then we're an adolescent. There's a big difference between those two. That's it. It's an initiation to turn into an adolescent. In the old days, we would celebrate that. We would say, okay, your child is, has died in a sense, and now you're stepping into your adolescence. And then you would step into adulthood. You would become a parent. That's another initiation. These initiations put to death, in a way, these old places that we've been, so that you can step into the new. You take the wisdom, but you leave sort of the mindset of that old one behind. So in the term of initiations, we are evolving and going up these 7 steps of awareness, and we are dying each time we do it. We're leaving behind these old parts, but we're also bringing through these new parts, and we're expanding. Every step in the Kanchispatanyana is about expansion. In the Andean tradition, it would be about expansion of your reach. You have more karpai. But if we also think about it in terms of our consciousness, we're expanding our consciousness. Fear collapses our consciousness and constrains us into a very tight little ball of self, individual self, self-reflective self, worry about self. And the more we bring in love and compassion, the more that divide starts to go away, and the more we start to see, I am you and you are me, and we are important to each other, and we need each other to survive. Not we have to kill each other off so I can have more, or strangle off your source of resources so I can have more. So that's kind of what I mean by initiations are deaths and rebirths, and very much parallels that idea of Karpai.
Beautiful, really a strong response about, this initiation. I think it's really great. Thank you for sharing this and for this teaching as well. And I just want to ask you also, because I know that you have trained also with Juan and Ivan Nunes del Prado. And I just want to see if you have maybe some sort of a teaching that you want to share for our audience here, like how to follow this path of awakening further, as you already talked about these 7 steps and these 7 levels and of this path that we're all walking through. But do you have anything to share here?
Yeah, one of the simple, the training is filled with energy exercises, with evolving yourself through doing these energy exercises. And then the beginning part of the training, the Panya, we learn sort of the 3 basic tools of the tradition. And one of them is about receiving support from Pachamama, Mother Earth. And we all need that right now. We all need to feel supported. There's so much chaos. When we go back to that child who hasn't been hugged by mother and whose nervous system is rattled, until that kid finally gets a hug from their normal nervous system mother, they're going to be dysregulated. If a gazelle is running from a lion, as soon as it gets away from the lion, it just shakes out all that nervous energy. But in our traditions, we're not, we're very emotionally repressed. And so you're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to misbehave. You're not allowed to slam the door. You're not allowed to be angry. You're not allowed to express that you have been traumatized. And sometimes our parents do not know that we've been traumatized. Mostly they do not know when we're little kids, because there's a lot of shame, or there's lying that covers it up, all these things. So we don't get to re-regulate our nervous system against the mother that we need to. Like the way that we re-regulate our nervous system is we go to mom or dad, but more likely mom in the beginning, and mom holds us, and we stay in her arms, and our nervous system comes back to normal. And then she lets us go and we scamper off. But so many people are not getting their nervous systems re-regulated, and they're going into adulthood and they're doing all kinds of crazy things, and they're having to take medications, they're shooting up schools, they're doing all kinds of crazy things. And so where I'm going with this is there's this beautiful practice that comes from Juan and Ivan, which is coming from the Andean tradition. Juan studied with the Andean teachers for many, many, many years, and it's called Saiwa Chakwi. And Saiwachakwi is bringing up a bolus of energy from Pachamama and letting her just hold you, embrace you in that warm motherly energy. And in a sense, you're re-regulating your nervous system. Not only are you re-regulating your nervous system, you're getting connected to the mother again. A lot of us are like, yeah, my mom was, not the best mother. And so we don't have a strong connection to the mother anymore. We're just like trying to do it on our own. So this practice of Saiwachakwi is where you just get quiet. You want me to lead you through it? Yeah, we just get quiet and we sit and we connect to the earth. And the earth herself is Mama Alpa. The feminine energy of creation is Pachamama. Either one of them are work to connect with. I like Pachamama because we're doing all of creation. I want the big mama. And we just pull up, and you can do this in a very, contained way. Pull up a column, and then fill the column with that energy. But if you want to do it in just the most supportive way, just pull up a hug from the mother, pull up energy from the earth, and let it surround you and just hold you and sit in it. And let all your stress drain into the earth. Let your nervous system connect with her. She has a very steady beat, Mother Earth. She has a heartbeat. She has a nervous system beat, a rhythm. And we see if we can't connect. This part isn't Juan and Vaughn's, but this is the part I throw in there because I think it's important. See if we can't connect with the nervous system of Mother Earth, of Pachamama, while we're bringing up that energy, that maternal energy, and being held in it. Just seeing if we can get re-regulated. Seeing if we can't feel that support from the Almighty Mother, from that Mother that is always with us. Fierce as all can be, supportive, loving, nurturing. That feminine aspect of creation. And it often doesn't take very long just to connect to her and get rewired. If you want to, you can actually lie on the ground and just put as much of you on the ground as possible and pull it. You don't have to be vertical. You still just pull up this hug from Pachamama and let her hold you. And then when you're ready, you can release that and say thank you, and move on with your day.
I love this hug from Pachamama. I know this practice, but the way you described it is so beautiful. And I think it will be very supportive to everyone to do this practice more often and connect with Mother Earth. So thank you so much for this teaching as well, Christina. And I know kind of getting to the end of our interview, and I just want to make sure that our audience will know how to find you and about your work and your offerings. So can you maybe say something about what your next upcoming offerings will be?
My next upcoming offerings will be in 2025. We're at the end of this year already, so I'm just wrapping things up this year. But in 2025, I will be offering an intro class just to see if you like the Andean tradition, just a day class. It's called the Introduction to Andean Mysticism. I also offer a superceptor class, which is a class for people who are highly sensitive. And it's a 2-day class to really look at both the nervous system and then the Andean tradition and pairing them, and how can we, become more empowered empaths. Empaths tend to go into victim, and so it's really important to empower them so that they can step into owning their energetics and using their energetics and being, effective at what they have. And then, of course, there's the Andean Foundation training, which is a 2-month program where we just dive into the 3 sections of the Andean teachings that come through Juan and Yvonne. And it's energy exercises, it's going through your personal power, the 3 personal powers, which are your thought, your feelings, and your actions. I cannot even tell you all the things that it's about in this short period of time, but it is the foundation of this path. And it's important. It's an important set of teachings for anybody and everybody, whether you want to go on with the path or not. Just knowing these tools, these exercises, and this way of thinking will change your life. Absolutely will change your life. And then I also have an applied energy medicine program called the Energy Medicine Certification Program. Excuse me. And that's where we learn how to use the energy medicine for clients. I help people heal from trauma, and I use this energy medicine. I pair it with some other things that are not from this tradition, like psychology and breath work. So we can really get into and tracking, which is part of this tradition in the sense that there's Kauai. But we get into the nitty gritty with someone on what's keeping them in dysfunction. And this is where I talk about dismantling your dysfunction and reassembling yourself. One of the things in the Andean tradition is we have this little seed in our chest called our Inca seed, and it is who we are. And so when someone comes to us for healing, it's their seed that's saying, will you please sort this person out? Like they, this person that's wrapped around me is making my life miserable. I'm trying to bloom and blossom, and this person's really, done some crazy things with their psyche to prevent that. And so healing is going in there and looking at who we've created ourselves to be, usually in response to some kind of trauma, some kind of trigger, some kind of bad thing that's happened to us, or a series of bad things, and rewiring ourselves at all levels, rewiring ourselves energetically, rewiring our brain, and rewiring our sense of self, our psyche. And all of that on some level is informed by our Inca seed, but it's a lot of energy medicine. And then there's a fair amount of just concepts that come from psychology, in the sense of you have to look into your shadow, you have to look into your unconscious. That's where all these things are stored. So you need to learn how to track. So that's the energy medicine certification program. And I'm thinking I'm going to offer some other classes that I don't have up yet. I'm still figuring out the rest of next year, but there will be a lot of things coming.
Great. That's so exciting. Oh, so many beautiful offerings.
Thank you. One of the things I forgot to mention is Joan Percy Wilcox and I teach a lot of classes together. We teach a Paco practice. Once you've taken the Andean Foundation class, then we have some classes that we co-teach that we just love doing together. So that's another part of my offerings. But yes, I would so appreciate it if you put those links up. And I look forward to engaging everyone who is interested in this path. There are a lot of us that teach it, and I know that. And I would like to just say that what I bring to it is this trauma path. I have been deeply immersed in this healing from trauma, and I have been relentless and looking into the darkness and the light and finding the ways to restructure us and reframe us and we call it a mastai in the tradition, reorganize ourselves into health.
Yeah, I think that's a really unique blend of gifts and how you make it all really relevant in this modern day world, as many people also suffer from trauma, and how you bring all of these things together, which is, yeah, a beautiful, unique way of doing this. So thank you so much, Christina, for sharing your wisdom and knowledge and all of your beauty, and the way you speak about all of these things is really, really valuable. So thank you so much. And also for your support in our directory.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I always enjoy these talks.
And I also know that you have a beautiful gift for the audience as well, to have a free class in the beginning of 2025 entitled Stepping into the Fourth Level of Human Consciousness, the Path of Compassion. And it's great that you're offering this. I think you touched on it already a little bit in your talk. So we will make sure to, put all the links, of course, down this video, that everybody can find you and your work and your website and all of your offerings. And of course, this free class, which is amazing. So people can get to know about these Indian traditions further, and yeah, know about your work. Thank you. And to everybody who's joining here, thank you for being here. And we hope to have you again joining us around the cosmic fire with our next interviews.